the right angle for the fur, because I want to come just outline around here, and I have to sort of, just as I mentioned before, make sure the fur is going in the right direction. And this fur around here is quite long as well, relatively speaking. It's a short-haired cat, so, but you know, the fur is probably in the order of an inch long, and it's laid flat and laid, so there's quite long strokes involved, whereas up really around the nose it's maybe a millimetre or two long. So I'm going to be using longer strokes when I do the hair as we get further away from the nose, just so that you actually get that impression when you're looking at the finished piece. And again, it's that salt and pepper effect on the outside, where the black and the white come together a little bit. Sometimes you can actually get a fairly straight, clean edge with black and white fur, but sometimes, like as you can see around, as I say, the face here, the black and the white merge together to give you sort of a speckled or salt and pepper effect. Or rather, it would, if a fella had a beard that looked like this, it'd be called salt and pepper. Yes. Again, it's just I wouldn't say you need patience to do this, because it's and a lot of people imagine that you do, but it kind of doesn't work that way. When you're doing something like this, patience is needed when things aren't going as you want them to go. That's when you need patience. When you're doing this, it looks like I need to be patient because I'm apparently not making a lot of progress. It's taking quite a long time to develop the image, and you know, people would imagine that needs patience. Sometimes you kind of wish it went faster, and I can actually make this faster. I can turn the heat up and I can move the tool faster to compensate, but it doesn't actually make a great deal of difference, because it still takes an appreciable amount of time to do it, even if I heat the tool up. But the difference is that I'm not really patience doesn't really come into it, because I'm making progress. Every time I put this tool down on the wood, I'm making a mark, and so I'm making progress, and generally patience is required when you're not. So I'm seeing sort of slow but steady progress, and it's one of these things that after a couple of hours you'll look at it and you've done a lot more than you actually might feel. But areas like just down, there's a bit down here which isn't taking colour quite as nicely as I would like it to do, and that's when frustration might step in, and that's when patience is required, so that you don't necessarily do something silly like turn the heat up as far as it go and touch the pen and to the surface, and you get this really dark blob, which then is very difficult to deal with. Okay, again I'm just looking at the image, dotting around it a little bit. I'm trying to work from the outside in, because that's the way the fur lies over the top of each other, at least for this first layer. Once I've done the first layer, it's less of a problem. I've established most of the angles and the layering effect, so that when I go over it again, it doesn't really have much. It doesn't really create much impact in terms of the shape, as long as I follow the marks I've already made. Now there are some really excellent pyrographic artists around. You can find them reasonably easy on YouTube if you search for pyrography. There's quite a lot which is advertising more than an artist, so they're advertising or effectively showing you how to use a particular manufacturer's tool on behalf of the manufacturer. But there are, there's still excellent artists and still well worth looking at those things. Just bear in mind that they're advertising a particular tool. But other than that, one of the most excellent artists I've come across is I think Jean Buick, I think it is, or Buick. If you look for her, she generally, you'll see time-lapse versions of the art that she does, because these things do take several hours or tens of hours, and some of the artwork that Jean produces is absolutely phenomenal in terms of the detail and in terms of the colouring that's applied, monochrome colouring, but shading that's applied. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in pyrography or at least watching it, to check her out on the internet, on YouTube specifically, I guess. There are also artists, if you again just doing a general pyrography search, that you will find there's at least one that I come across who I can't actually recall at the moment, but does pyrography on really large sheets of wood with a blowtorch. So instead of using a little tiny tool like this, he's using a dirty great big I was about to say industrial blowtorch, but a fairly heavy duty gas torch, and creating amazing scenes from that as well. And that's he's working on large sheets of wood, so it's not something this small. If you try to do it with a blowtorch something this small, you wouldn't get very good quality out of it, because the blowtorch is quite a large flame, so you need to work on a bigger canvas. But again, amazing to watch. Of course you can just watch me, but I'm not about to use a blowtorch, I'm afraid. That's over the top of his head there. We're coming across this, I'm working out the angles, so we are horizontal, roughly around the eye, so this is going to come in this sort of direction. So right, I'm possibly going to regret what I'm about to do, but I'm about to try and create just an angle, a line across here at the right angle, just to help me visualize the fur direction. Trying to do that. That's not too bad. Trying to do that. Trying not to make it too prominent, because if I'm not careful, that line will be visible for quite a long time, and it'll take quite a lot of work to actually get rid of the line. So I do have to be a little bit wary of doing blocks like that. It's better to do a line as I've done here rather than a line like this. So if I try and do blocks like this, I end up with hard edges. So it's better to try and do a full width or a full arc of when you're doing this sort of thing. It's so dark. It's really difficult. I'm kind of using this other picture here as well, just to give me an idea of what the fur angles will be. They're not going to be identical. The positions are slightly different, and they're different cats, and each cat has its own particular fur patterns, but they're similar enough to be able to assist me in what I'm trying to understand in doing this. And for some reason this cable seems to be acting as though it wants to wrap around my hand. Tell you what, I've probably got a twist in it. There we go. Right. So just lots and lots of fur. Now if I make sure I move reasonably slowly with this tool, it will actually get dark. This edge that's here at the moment is quite light. As I say, as I've said before, it's not fantastically a problem like that, because the intention is to go over it at least once or twice to create the colour that I want. Now that in itself might seem a little bit wasteful, but there is a, as I've mentioned, there is a few reasons for it. One is I like the control that gives me. It's easier to darken something by going over it a second time than it is to lighten it if you've made it too dark. The second is it creates a depth of colour as well, which if you do it all in one go you don't get, or it's a lot harder to achieve a depth of colour. And in terms of texturing as well, you might be able to see there's it's not showing up greatly, but you might just be able to see there's kind of like 3 lines here, and it's really difficult. What that is I'm starting and finishing in the same place, and so the start and end tend to, because they're bunched together, tend to appear to be darker, and then it sort of looks like, I don't know, somebody's cut the cat's fur in a very odd way. So just by going over it again, I can then start and finish in a different place and smooth out that the highlights and lowlights that have been created. The other thing I can do is try to remember to start and finish in different positions as well, so that I don't get that effect. But it's actually quite difficult to do, to be random about where you put the tool down. If you have a pencil, try it yourself. Try and colour in a square in relatively small strokes, but without starting and finishing in the same place every time. But because of the fur texture, I need to start at one side and work towards the other. So if you try that yourself with a pencil, you'll probably find yourself doing exactly the same thing, and it's really hard to be quite random about it so you don't create these ridge-like effects. And if you can do it, well done. For me it takes practice, and I need more practice. The fact that I can multi-layer this makes it easier for me. Right. Now then, the base of the ear is about here. So, because the fur kind of changes direction somewhat around the ear, and just because the ear sticks up, so there's hair which is going into the ear across his forehead here, but then comes around the ear along the side. And I will actually need to put in the edge of the ear, which is quite a dark, smooth area, because right on, generally speaking, the very edge of the ear itself is either got no hair or it's got little tiny fine hairs, so it looks very silky like. So I don't want any big hairs crossing that the boundary there, so which is why I wanted to know roughly where the ear stops, because then I know where I can cross that line, or cross where the line would be if it continued. Again, it's just all about a realistic looking image. I think I will turn this height up just a little bit. And just see if it's coming a little bit. I'm probably working a bit too fast, but it seems to be what I'm naturally working at tonight. So to compensate for that, I've just turned the heat of this tool up a little bit, and I may need to turn it up a little bit more because it's kind of a bit too light for a first pass. It's as I say, it's quite alright to do that because I can just go over multiple times. And that will, create depth and create a better fur structure, but I don't want to be doing it 10 or 15 times, so I do want a first layer, sort of like this sort of colour would be ideal to start with. And that's because I do know that this is going to go as, not necessarily as dark as I can possibly get it, but it is going to go really dark. The interesting thing about monochrome images like this is, looking at this other cat for example here, you almost certainly read his fur as being black, and I mean the camera doesn't help a little bit because it's darkening it down, but it's a black cat, and you're quite happy to believe that's a black cat even though the colour that you're looking at isn't black. You kind of read that as being what's expected. I mean, you're looking at the pupil of the eyes, you will almost certainly be seeing those as jet black, and this colour therefore is very close to it. And in actual fact, there's a significant difference between these two, but your eye is kind of fooled because of what it's expecting to see. So you don't actually, even though it's a black cat, you don't actually have to go black. You can get very dark and still it will still look as you intend it to do. Colour, shade, and what colours are next to each other can have really significant effects when you're viewing images, and create lots and lots of optical illusions. It is even possible to make white look like black, and you kind of can't really imagine that. And possibly, if you recall, probably about a month ago there was a lot of internet controversy over a particular dress as to what colour it was, and different people saw completely different colours from the same photograph, and it effectively was an optical illusion. Depending on how your eyes saw the relative colours to each other, your eyes were actually effectively telling your brain it was seeing a different colour, or your brain was telling you were seeing a different colour. Probably wasn't your eyes per se, but it's how your brain interpreted the colours. Then that there is about the edge of this, so I can now do some further crosses that boundary. Again, I'm just trying to, because I've got a transition from going over the head that way here, and as I move over, I've got to transition to moving in completely the opposite curve to the one that I start over the head. But those of you who are watching, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to say hello in the chat. I know it's a little quiet in there tonight. I'm kind of wondering if it's actually broken, but I don't think so. But there again, you never know with Twitch chat. So if you have been asking or saying hello in chat and I've not been responding, nothing is actually showing up at my end here. So if you have been saying something in chat, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just not seeing anything. Don't think there's anything wrong with it, but if you are lurking, that is okay. You don't need to say anything if you don't wish to do so. Quite happy for you to continue with whatever it is that you're doing whilst you watch. Yeah, the colour, it's interesting because I'm kind of wondering if these two pieces, when they came out of the larger sheet that they were cut from, were in this sort of position to each other, because I'm having a problem here getting a tone, a darkish tone, and I had exactly the same problem when I did this other plaque in exactly the same area, and it's almost as though there's a section of the tree around here where the sap colour just the sap that's in it just doesn't want to colour or to come out and get coloured, so it's looking at the moment very light. In fact, it kind of makes, at the moment, it's kind of like looking as though the cat's got a 6 o'clock shadow, which is an English term for somebody who hasn't shaved all day. So it's a curve, got to get that curve in, so that, yeah. I'm kind of itching to fill the curve in, but I know if I do that, then I'm going to create these block looking effect. That'll take a lot of work to get rid of in the final piece. So despite my efforts here, I'm still getting these blobs. And actually that's, well, it is down to me, but it's also the tool is not necessarily helping a little bit, because as I hold the tool off the wood, it heats up, and it heats up fairly quickly. I mean, this tool heats up from cold to working temperature in about 2 or 3 seconds, and as I hold it off the wood, the tool heats up, so the instant it makes contact, it makes a darker mark which sucks the heat away. And then as I continue moving the tool, the mark tapers off in colour, and I don't really want to have all these dots, but it's something I am. There's techniques that I'm using here to try and avoid it, but it's just down to thermodynamics. The technique I'm using to try and avoid it is, before I touch the tool to the wood, it's moving. I touch it and keep moving at the same speed, and I lift off and keep the tool moving. It's quite a subtle difference, which you probably can't see on stream, but the intention of that is because you actually get, the colour is dependent on how long the heat is applied. If I touch it down and then start moving, there's a fraction of a second when it's not moving, and that applies more heat than that fraction later when it is moving across the wood, so you get the blob. If I move the tool and then touch it down whilst it's still moving, I get less of a blob, because the tool is at a constant rate. It doesn't sit in one particular space very long. And then we're just down to the thermodynamics of the fact that it heated up whilst it wasn't touching the wood. So it's you still get the mark, but it's a lot less than it would be and it is controllable from the point of view of the next layer that I put on. I can fill in the gaps. Hello Call, good, sorry, hello, yeah, hello Call is how I would pronounce that. Good evening, welcome to the stream. Thank you very much for saying hello. I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing, and thank you very much for proving that Twitch chat is at least working. It's been a little bit quiet in chat tonight. I think there's a few people that are lurking, which is quite alright. But I was beginning to think Twitch was having another of its evenings off and deciding it wasn't going to send out chat conversations. So I hope you've had a good day. Hello Call it is. Ah, okay. Yeah, I'm not even sure. You can't use underscores, I don't think, can you? You might be able to use a dash, but yeah, it makes it look odd. One way to do it is I'm going to say either you have or Twitch has capitalised it on the second message there, so it looks a bit better to read. So I trust you've had a good day, or having a good day, depending on the time zone that you're in. I'm in the UK, so it's evening for me at the moment, 9 PM in the UK. And this is a piece which I started yesterday, and it will actually take several days to complete. And this really is just as well as applying the heat to create the colour, I'm actually creating a texture as well, which resembles cat fur or hair. If anybody has any questions, then feel free to ask them. I don't mind. Not only about pyrography, you will actually see me on streams doing a couple of other things. I have been doing relief carving, which I finished earlier this week, the latest piece that I had on the go. And I also I've also started scraper board as well, which is also interestingly a monochrome art form of white on black, which can create some really interesting images. And I've done exactly one piece in that so far, and I'm learning as I go. So day started cold, but got quite warm. Okay, some haircut. I can kind of understand that one. It started the opposite way where I am. I'm up in Yorkshire in the UK, and it started as quite a warm, sunny day, and gradually as the day wore on, it got cooler, and the sun was sort of not quite as strong. But it's still been a very, very pleasant day, and it is still quite warm. I mean, whilst I haven't got any windows open here, and I am using a fairly large light to the left of me, it's 25 degrees here in the studio at the moment, which is Celsius. That's probably around 80 Fahrenheit. So do you do any form of artwork or craft work, Holocol, or are you just interested?